JB here. Hope everyone's doing outstanding. It's Thursday, September 11th, 9:17 a.m. Apologies, it's 4 days in a row under the weather. Hopefully, I'll be much better heading into next week. Saddest day of the year by far. I mean, everybody has memories, or if you don't, either way, gosh, sad day. Um, but anyway, talk really quick about the markets. Some names I'm looking at go from there. S&P futures up about 0.2%. CPI data came in pretty much in line with expectations. So if you're looking for a scenario for number one, the Fed to cut rates next week, and number two, the market not to tank, that this is it, right? PPI data yesterday negative, and then the CPI data pretty much flat. So all systems go. Like yesterday, I always worry about sell the news. To me, I'd rather have seen a move like yesterday, where we didn't have a huge gap that people start to take profits. So hopefully, market finds footing here and either holds its ground or melts higher. Upper Bollinger Band on SPY is like 652. Why don't I have it up here? 652.93. So that might be an area that it's like a magnet. But we kind of sigh of relief with the CPI data, but we did get the weekly jobless claims number this morning, and it came in 30,000 jobs claim above estimates. So now the two stories, right? And the two stories since Fed Chair Powell's Jackson Hole speech, he was talking about the unemployment, right? That was the concern, the big issue. Didn't really talk too much about the inflation. And now you see the unemployment situation. We had the benchmark revisions again earlier this week, kind of painted that picture of a weakening job market. And thankfully, the inflation data has come in line or flat or better than expectations. So that or cooler than expectations. So I would say it's a win-win, right? I mean, you want to see job growth or at least the job market not deteriorate, but certainly sets the stage for rate cuts. And the Fed has opportunity to do things because they weren't aggressive cutting rates since last September. So I think all things good. Take a look at yields yesterday, again, all the way down to the April lows. And you look at the yields right now this morning, they were just in the red. Yeah, they're slightly lower. So good stuff. So we'll see what happens here today. Again, I don't want to see a sell the news. I'm always, not always, but I'm wary of that. And we've seen this over the past. So I'll just be watching 652 and change. I think that we might get some chop. And we saw it yesterday all the way pretty much to Wednesday's lows or Wednesday's close. So we pretty much filled the gap from Wednesday into Tuesday into Wednesday. So wouldn't be surprised to see some chop here. On the flip side, if we do have a sell the news 647.22 or so, that's the kind of area where maybe I'll be open to getting V puts, SQQ calls as a hedge. So that's overall market. Now just quick on some individual names. First, I mean, I don't have too much time to do the rant here, but open after the close yesterday, just great news. If you're holding open, I mean, it's a great story now, right? They just hired the CEO of Shopify as the CEO, right? And then they also have the two founders coming back as on the board of directors. So now you have a great leadership team, right? And you see a lot of moves on stocks based not on fundamentals or earnings or whatever. Sometimes you see huge moves on stocks because of leadership changes. So this is like best case scenario for open. I still, and I've said this when it was $2 and $4, and it's a tough one to hold because there's been some wide swings. But to me, it's like hard for me to find how that business is going to succeed, just because of all the variables, right? And there's a lot of variables: the interest rates, house prices, being able to get in and out of a house quickly enough to make the slim margins that you might have in regards to the profits. But to me, I've always said this for the last 15 years. This is one of like the last. It's I would say it's outer space, like the last frontier, like Star Trek. But the housing sector is like one of those sectors that somehow, some way, it just hasn't been disrupted to as much as I think it should be disrupted. I mean, the transaction process with the real estate agents, the costs involved on both sides, the fees, it's just everything. It's like if you look to sell your house, you have to factor in so many cost things into it. Getting the title insurance, the survey, like all the inspection, all those different things that go into it. It's just mind-boggling to me. So hopefully one of these companies can go out and do it. And the thing with open is like even if you look on Zillow, you can see get your cash offer, and who knows, it's just I'm rooting for the longs. I hopefully it goes. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. But UPB mentioned in the chat room too, like there's the guy who's running this open, I won't call it this pump, but he was, very bullish on Carvana. And I remember looking at Carvana back in the day, and then I see the towers with cars in there. I'm like, how are they going to pull this off? And now you take a look, and boom. Not only have they pulled it off, they've disrupted a sector that was dying for disruption. So Those are always the best stories. As a name that succeeds in a sector that has archaic infrastructure that gets disrupted. So I'm rooting for the longs there. We'll see what happens. All right, so that's another note rant for another day. Needless to say, I'm not getting calls on open. Not saying it can't go to the moon. Maybe it does. He raised his price target to 500. I mean, we'll see. Good luck. I'm not saying it's sarcastic. Hey, maybe it does. I'm not dismissing. All right, so now just individual names. I talked about yesterday afternoon too. MDB. I was looking as a simply move to Oracle earnings, that huge cloud number. I thought gap and go on some of these names, and MDB gapped it, goad, not a word, but up to 345, didn't just fizzled. And once start breaking 340, I was worried about the premiums. Closed the calls out for a loss. I rarely close out weekly calls for a loss. Right? Just not because I've seen so many times over the years where you close something out on a Thursday and then Friday, makes for a rough weekend when you see the thing get an upgrade or some kind of catalyst. Still watching this one. Even the charts alone, regardless of what Oracle did with its earnings, you can make the case that MDB has had a huge gap and run after its earnings, consolidated, and then it could be a bull flag for the next leg to 360. So that's how I look at it. So might look for some more calls there today. I did get the GME calls yesterday. Going to be patient there as well. Fifth consecutive quarter of earnings, profitability. They finally into growth, the collectible side. No one talks about like the Pokemon cards and all that other stuff, but that's like a hot sector. It's not something I do and not something I know very well. But they got into it and everybody laughed at them, and then all of a sudden it's like their biggest growth lever outside of. I mean, the Switch came out, so that drove some of their hardware and stuff. I I mean, you look at it, their cash position, what, 8 billion up from 4 billion last year. It's just an interesting story, I think. And you start looking at the chart, there's areas, you want to see 24 hold today. That was kind of like the chop range. And then you start looking at some of these gaps, 25.50 and then all the way up to 28.50. So I'll be patient there. A Nike disappointing. I don't know if Nike, some of it was because of the Dow, and the Dow was red yesterday solidly. So I don't know if it, just as a function of the Dow, but it was disappointing. Upgraded again for the second time this week, or at least positive analyst commentary, all the way up over 75. I'm like, oh, 74.95 is the 50. It's gonna run and gun, and then it just gave it back and chopped around for the rest of the day in the low 74s. If it breaks 75 today, I'll look for some strikes to encompass earnings. They report 9:30. Reddit, kind of like the one that got away. Just, I was talking about the tight Bollinger Band for the last week or so, and then finally broke out. Just, it's the timing part of it, right? You could have been in calls on a Friday going into the starting week, and then Monday it sells off, and then, Tuesday, Wednesday, some nice rallies. So I still think this heading 300, and it could be one of those smash up moves where you get it, 300, 350, dare I say 400 in the coming months as people like figure out this story. I mean, to me, the AI is one side of it, the hardware, the chips, all the energy, all those sides of it. But then it's like, where does all this information come? And one of the best untapped resources for that is humans, right? And I mean, a lot of what the search does for the AI and questions and thing is pulling from these sources, but Reddit, people think it's not a pertinent resource, and it's so. I just think that at some point there'll be some continued FOMO. I mean, the stock's up from $80 at Liberation Day because people worried that Google and changing their algorithm and stuff was going to be the end of Reddit, and it turned out to be anything but. So I've been struggling to try and add some calls because they look expensive. But if you start looking through the lens that, hey, it's a 300 stock and maybe it gets FOMO over 300, then maybe those 300 October strikes don't look expensive or even into next week. So I might finally pull the trigger there. And then last but not least, we do get some kind of reversal here today on the SPY, 647 or so, and even 650. Visa looks weak, and it was under the 200-day moving average yesterday. Bounced, still didn't close above it. It did that back at the start of August and then bounced. So I'm not going to discount a bounce, but at the same token, if we do have some kind of sell the news, I might look for some strikes to play for some put hedges. And sure enough, Reddit's gapping this morning. So we'll see if I get a chance. All right, let's have a great day, folks. I'll be back. Rock and roll.